And a good Tuesday afternoon to you. Welcome on in to lunch with Claibs and Joe here on claibsonline.com. Powered, as always, by Ameren, Illinois, and driven by Munganass St. Louis Acura. I am Joe Roderick, joined alongside by Mike Claiborne. Claibs, how are you?
I am well. It's a Tuesday, and we've already gotten off to a good start for the week.
Yeah, it's
Well, for the most part. I mean, you're a Blues fan. Now, you couldn't say that, but they'll turn it around tonight. They'll get their first win tonight.
well, I mean, first they won the first 3 games of the year.
No, but I mean, first win of the month.
Oh, okay, yeah.
Yeah.
You would think that they were off to a start that has never been seen before with this early season losing streak, but it does seem like a long time ago when they were 3-0 to start the year.
Yeah, a lot of things have changed. There's a lot of things that's wrong with this hockey team. First of all, there's no commitment. They're not winning puck battles. They're not drawing penalties. They're not playing the body. A lot of backdoor goals are being scored. Weak side guys aren't covering their position. We had a goal like that last night. So I think when you look at this team overall, it's just about commitment. And the commitment comes off and on the ice. And it's okay to play the body. I mean, I know they don't want fighting in the game, but that doesn't mean they don't allow body checking. So it's okay to do that. And so they've got to start winning the shifts and being a little bit more efficient. And when the puck goes in the corner, don't let a guy come out of the corner every time, and you have to start all over again. So I go back to the one word commitment, and they got to quit talking and just go do it.
David Perron no longer on the team, but he always seemed to be kind of a whipping boy for the Blues in years past. So, who on the team do you?
Jordan Kyrou. Jordan Kyrou. The money, the contract, his plus minus is double digits. He's not an effective hockey player right now, and I think because some feel that maybe he got the money too soon. I'm one of them. And it's amazing how we reward guys with one season of play, and all of a sudden we sign him up for life. My question is, where was he going? You mean to tell me you couldn't do that deal at the end of this year? If you thought it was going to cost you more money, then I get that. But I just think you have to be very careful in long-term lockups like this because they can come back to bite you.
They lose to the Bruins last night. I was going to wait a while to get into all of this in regards to the Bruins and the Blues, but the Blues stuff is on ice. The Bruins had a lot of drama this past week off the ice for a signing that they made. Mitchell Miller, a former top draft pick in the NHL, and by the I shouldn't say top draft pick, they former draft pick,
fourth round pick,
Arizona Coyotes back in 2020, and then was let go by the Coyotes after some stories surfaced from something he did as a 14-year-old 6 years ago, as he was bullying a special needs student at his school, and the Bruins knew that. Everybody was well aware of the history with Mitchell Miller, and they still went and signed him. And the backlash they got was so bad that they immediately have cut ties with him as well.
Yeah, and I commend Gary Bettman by saying there's not a chance in hell this guy's playing in the National Hockey League. And he was quick and decisive. The American Hockey Association Hockey League also had to kind of backtrack on allowing him to play in the minors there. And, I know people say, well, that was, a few years ago, but he had a pattern of being a bully, not just to this special needs African-American kid, but to some other kids as well, on and off the ice. And I don't know whether he ever learned his lesson, because apparently his parents have not been engaging in trying to correct this young man. All they want him to do is play hockey. And they, it's the whole thing. Well, kids are just being kids. No, that doesn't work here. I mean, the bully thing is one thing. Special needs is another. The racial slurs were another. I mean, this guy checked every wrong box there was to be found. And, at some point, somebody has to pay a price for it. And I know some would say, well, you're taking away his livelihood, his career. Well, what did he take away? What has he done? He's taken away some things from people, too. And every now and then, I think you have to make sure you prove a point about what you're not going to allow. The NHL's got a couple other guys like that. That guy Tony D'Angelo is another guy who's had some off ice issues, and he's bounced around a little bit. But I commend the NHL for stepping up and putting their money or putting their mouths where their reputation is.
Yeah, and I mean, that's a good lesson to parents out there too, as far as showing, 14 years old. You look about that's an eighth grader. In a lot of cases, that's something that is going to carry with that kid the rest of his life. That's something you can show, you can point out to your kids at a young age and basically just say, hey, don't be an asshole. Don't be,
Yeah.
this stuff isn't, this kid now 7 years later, he's not a kid anymore, but this stuff is going to carry with him. And as you said, I mean, he fourth round pick, who knows if he would have made it to the NHL, but there's, as you said, Gary Bettman said, no chance he's going to play in his NHL.
Well, and he was a fourth round pick because everybody knew the backstory. Most people think he would have been drafted much higher. But Arizona took him in the fourth round because everybody knew the story and knew that he was damaged goods, so to say. So
Yeah.
where he goes from here, I don't know. I think the other issue that comes into play here is I'm not sure how contrite he's been about this whole thing, and that may be another reason why he's not playing in the National Hockey League or a National Hockey League affiliate.
So yeah, the Bruins have cut ties with him. He is back out there being a free agent. So I guess a easy transition from a story along the lines of actions have consequences. I think we might as well talk about Kyrie. We might as well bump that up and talk about him, who, he has been in the headlines for things that he believes, things that he has said for many years now, going all the way back to his flat earther comments, and then during the COVID shutdown, not getting the vaccine, not being there for his team last year, and now with the anti-Semitic views that stories that have found him here recently.
I mentioned this on a radio show earlier in the week. Demetrius Johnson, good friend of mine, we talked about this last week, and he said it best. He said, man, there's something wrong with this dude. And I don't know how else you could put it. Now, for all the bad things Kyrie has done, there are a lot of things he's done quietly behind the scenes to help people, okay? But it seems like this, I can do anything I want to approach and not have any repercussions. It's probably gone as far as we can take it because 98% of the time he is a distraction for one reason or another. And I really believe two things. If he wasn't as talented of a player, he'd be out of the league by now. But I also believe this. I don't think he'll play next year in the NBA because he's unrestricted. And the NBA, we've seen how organizations and leagues can engineer the banning of a player without officially saying it. If you don't think so, ask Colin Kaepernick. Teams can come together, and the unwritten rule is, we're not interested. We're going to move on for one reason or another. And I really don't think Kyrie Irving will play in the NBA after this year.
Isn't he
I think teams have had enough. He's vice president of Players Association. Yeah, you're right. And that's now in question because there's a lot of players that are upset with him with regard to how he's handled this because it puts everybody else on blast. And, this is a league that I guess my issue here is this is a league that really stood up for its players and their social concerns. When the other leagues were like, well, we don't want to mix politics with sports. The NBA was like, no, this is what we're going to be doing. And this is what we're going to have on our jerseys. This is what we're going to have on our floor. This is what we're going to do to support our players and their feelings. We don't need to play a game on this day. They did everything you could ask for, including the NBA getting rid of two of the worst owners they could ever have in the guy who owned the Clippers,
Sterling,
and that Donald Sterling, and now Robert Sarver with the Phoenix Suns. They got rid of. Hey, you have to sell your team because you do not fit our goals and values as members of the National Basketball Association, be it players and or owners. So they've stepped up and corrected what took place. I fault the NBA and its players for not being more vocal. 5-game suspension is bullshit, okay? In every sense of the word. $500,000 fine. Joe, the guy makes $36 million a year. So what's 500,000 to him? So I think that there should have been a more harsh uh, sentence, punishment, because we've had this happen. There was a player with Miami last year who went in a similar direction, and the basketball reference Times couldn't even find him now. I mean, he's no longer to be found playing in the NBA.
Who was that?
And I can't think of his name. If you roll it out, but we had a player who made some comments last year, and the NBA suspended him. And the next thing you know, he was released, and we have not heard from him since. And I'll look him up once we're done with this, and we'll put it out on the site later.
Yeah, I'm trying to go through and look at who that might be. I'm not familiar with that story from that. But regardless, I mean, maybe we should stop, putting so much thought. Maybe we should stop putting so much, I guess, attention behind players, athletes who, barely have a college education. And this goes for all sports. All sports. This when you look at some of this, maybe these guys. Charles Barkley put it best. He's not a role model. These guys aren't role models. Maybe we need to stop talking to them about any social issues that they might have, and then we don't have to have discussions like this when it comes down to it. But there is a young generation that looks up to everything that all these guys say, no matter the sport as well, and it's something that when they speak about stuff, they are going to influence others.
I'm going to disagree with you on that because I think players have a voice, and I don't have a problem with them having a voice. And I may not always agree with it, but you know what? They pay taxes. They're citizens like you and me, so I don't know why they should be relegated and not having a voice. Now, sometimes it's an unqualified voice, but I can show you a lot of people who are running for office today that have an unqualified voice also. All right, that's just who we are. That's who we are as a society. So I am not. I'm not. I'm not on board. I think the guy should have a voice because if it wasn't for the Wilt Chamberlains and the Kareems and the Jim Browns and the people at the Cleveland Summit speaking up in unity, I'm not sure where black athletes would be today. And it's not just black athletes. I think people who may be different from others, whether you're gay, whether you're Asian, whether you're white, whatever the situation calls for, you need to have a voice. And I believe in people having a chance to exercise that voice. But I guess to your point, maybe there is a time and place for it. But I really feel like I'd like for them to be a little bit more engaged in understanding the cause and the issue compared to just blurting out something or posting something and not having direct knowledge of what it may look like in the eyes of someone else.
And a few of those unqualified people that you talk about here in about 7 hours from now, unfortunately, might be getting elected to certain offices.
That is unfortunate. It's the times we live in. And by the way, have you voted today?
I have not yet. No, I got off work and I came here. So
I did my voting early this morning. It was a nice crowd on hand. And let's hope we get some things done in this next term.
This is Lunch with Claibs and Joe here on claibsonline.com. We still have plenty of other stuff to talk about here on the show today. Football, baseball stuff. Claibs, you and I were together last night at the SLU basketball game, the opening tip-off for the Billiken season, and saw them knock off Murray State in the opener. What did you see from those Billikens that you liked last night?
That's a good question. As you said, it's the first game. There's only so many things you can take away. I think one of the things I saw was they get a chance to get a lot of shots. I mean, Yuri Collins makes this team go, but they made a lot. They had a lot of shot opportunities. Didn't make as many as they needed to. Defensively, they got some work to do. But it's game one. They're facing a team that had 12 new players. So it's really kind of hard to judge, but I do agree with Travis on one thing. They didn't put a cream puff to open up the schedule. Murray State's had a pretty good tradition. These players that were playing last night for them have come from various programs of Division I caliber. So it wasn't like they were playing, They
didn't go across the street and play Harris
Stowe. They didn't go across the
street
and ask Harris Stowe where they like to play.
Yeah.
So I appreciate that. On paper, And when you talk to people who go to practices and things of that nature, this may be as deep of a team as Travis has ever had. Now, having said that, we get to February, we may be looking for players because with injury and guys not living up to expectations and playing time and lack of, who knows what this team's going to look like. But on the surface, they're pretty solid everywhere. The backup point guard situation might be a challenge if Yuri goes down for an extended period of time. Gibson Jimerson's going to have to find a way to get his shot off instead of just standing out there waiting on somebody to pass it to him. Because other than that, he's not very effective. He can't guard, or he won't guard. He can't shoot with somebody in his face. He's got to come off screens. He's got to find an open spot on the floor. And he really kind of dilutes you defensively because he's the last guy down. And when he is down, he's not a very good defender. But everybody else has the potential to be that. So we'll see. I think this could be a very fun season. I'm going to say 24 wins this year for the Billikens.
Yeah, and as you mentioned that, you're talking about some of that. I saw last night Fred Thatch that they need to slow down a little bit. I don't know if it was first game, but it seems like there is a pretty big disconnect between Yuri Collins and watching him play his up-tempo, controlled style, and then Fred Thatch gets in there. And I think you saw it out of Travis Ford, too, a few times last night. He wanted him to slow down a little bit, wanted him to maybe think some things out a little bit before going out there and doing some things. So maybe one game into the year, see how that looks come game 5 of the season.
It's funny you say that because Fred Thatch is going on year 7 at St. Louis U because he's trying to finish up his PhD. And, he's an interesting player, does a lot of different things. Guy that I think can really help this ball club. I'm trying to I think Miles Leonard was the guy I was talking about.
Oh, the former Illini?
Yes. Yeah, it was March of 21.
If I remember correctly, I believe he was playing video games.
You are correct.
And made a comment. Yes,
anti-Semitic comment in the video game and got suspended. And
yes.
I don't know if Myers Leonard is even playing anymore in the NBA. I'm gonna look that up here in a minute. But it was.
Yeah. So that is yes. As you mentioned that, I do remember him making that. He made a Jewish slur,
and he has not been in the NBA since.
Twitch.
He's not on the NBA roster as we speak.
Yeah,
he's 7 feet tall and he can't find a job.
I mean, there's a lot of other, there's other 7-footers out there that they can find to fill that void.
But my point being this, I mean, he's done.
Yes.
And he's 7 feet tall. Kyrie, I think, should be done too. I just think, man, at some point we got to start drawing lines about what's real and what isn't. Mm-hmm. And the freedom of speech thing I respect, but I think when it comes a point, there's a fine line that I don't think people should cross when there are certain things that are offensive, detrimental, untrue. I don't think we can allow those people to have as big of a voice as they have.
Yeah. Hey, we are going to take a break. We're going to hit the reset button here on Lunch with Claibs and Joe. When we come back, we still have some MLB stuff to talk about, and we have some football talk about, college and pros. A lot still to go over here on Lunch with Claibs and Joe. We are powered by Ameren, Illinois, driven by Munganess St. Louis Acura, right here, claibsonline.com.
My name is Jeremy Seabury. I am one of the owners of Pawford K9.
Marcus Galmore, co-owner of Pawford K9.
What makes us different from other dog companies is there is no breed left behind. We stand by that 120%. We specialize in aggressive behavior modification. We don't turn away. We bring them in for a free evaluation to see if we can help the dog.
Here at Pawford K9, we focus on the owners, educating the owners.
How do I get this dog to give me the behaviors that I'm asking for without the treats? Mm-hmm. So that's when me and Marcus come in. We train the dog, so when you take the dog home, you don't need the treats. The dog is doing it because you're asking it to.
After each training package, we go through a series of lessons. We keep going until the owner gets it.
We make sure that they go over the beatings with their dog, and that dog is listening before they leave here, but also we follow up when they get home. Is your pup listening to you here? If it's not, we one phone call away, we'll make a trip. We got the Pawford Mobile. where we go out to their homes and make sure their dog is okay.
Back here at lunch with Claibs and Joe, driven by Munganast St. Louis Acura, also powered by Ameren, Illinois. And Claibs, a few weeks ago, we were at the headquarters for Ameren, Illinois, talking with their vice president about a few things they're working on.
Yeah, I'm looking forward to everybody having a chance to hear our next version of our visits with folks from Ameren. And Lenny Singh is going to sit down with us as well and talk about his vision about what Ameren, Illinois is going to be doing in the future in servicing most of Southern Illinois. And when you think about Ameren, it's not just electricity. They do a whole lot of natural gas as well. So they are forethinkers. They are always out in front on making sure their customers have the best service and the best opportunity to save on energy these days. And we'll have some very good conversations coming up here in the very near future.
Claibs, let's talk a little baseball as the season just wrapped up, and we are a couple days into the off season now. Hot Stove League. First off, Houston Astros win their second World Series this past weekend. Has winning this one, has it wiped away the memory of what they did in 2017?
Yeah, I think so. And if I recall, I do recall somebody saying it would be over in 6 and Houston would win. I think it does for a couple of reasons. One, a lot of the players who were involved in that last situation are no longer there, including manager, general manager, some players who allegedly were at the lead of this whole fiasco. You got some new players. I think Dusty Baker has instilled a lot more credibility within the organization. And the players who are on the horizon of being successful are new guys. I mean, you think about Pena, you think about Alvarez, you think about some of the young pitching. These are new guys. These guys weren't part of that. You know, I think that we can turn the page on this particular situation. The Houston Astros, and I'm trying to think, who was the guy who said you better pay attention to them out of the American League? Yeah, I guess it was me.
Everybody said that. You're sitting here acting like you.
On.
I mean,
no, hold on. Let's back up for a minute. Let's back up.
I mean,
because
this
everybody
was
the 2006
Cardinals that limped in. I mean,
everybody was hot to try about Seattle, the Yankees. Who else was everybody on riding their jock on? It was another team that everybody thought had a shot.
White Sox came in as a hot team. I think this past year. Everybody, Yankees. People wondered if the Angels were going to actually put it together for once.
Yeah, I mean, but Houston was the one team that was as consistent as anybody in the game. And obviously, the Dodgers ran away with it on the National League side. But Houston was just quietly beating people. And in my opinion, lost their best player, or one of their best players, in Michael Brantley. Michael Brantley is as professional of a hitter as there is. That was a guy I wish the Cardinals would have been able to latch on to a couple of years ago. But, it is what it is. By the way, did you see with a Powerball, there was one winning ticket in California?
Oh, really?
$2 billion is what it was, a little over $2 billion.
What's the tax on that in California?
Oh, I bet the guy walks away with maybe $900 million.
Poor thing.
Maybe, yeah. I mean, that's the last place you want to win a lottery in.
Right.
Jeez.
It was crazy yesterday going to the when I stopped at a Quick Trip on the way to Chaffetz yesterday, and the amount of people all over the entire Quick Trip that had their tickets out and had their pencils and pens or whatever and filling out their numbers all over the place. And going up there, and I was just trying to get
some gas. Yeah, exactly.
I just walked by. I mean, I didn't even realize they had the cards out like everywhere. Like you could grab them from multiple spots around there. I don't know if they're always there or what, but that's the first time I ever noticed it.
Yeah, it was insane. It's fun. I think as long as you take that approach, you'll be fine. But I always remind people there are other games of chance that you can win at as well, like the lotto. I mean, there's a lot of things. I have some tickets I have to check today to see what I did on some of the other games, and some of those pay out reasonably well. Also, maybe not.
I'll buy a scratch off every now and then. I'll buy a scratch off. I was big in the Willy Wonka scratch offs a year or two ago, and now they got the Price is Right scratch offs. And I'll every now and then, if I see it up there as I'm checking out, I'll buy one. I won $20 on one a few weeks ago, and I was real happy about that. I
Okay.
mean, yeah, that's what gets me excited. Winning $20 on a $5 scratch off. So, and then yeah, you turn right back around, you buy $20 more worth of
It's worth of
scratch offs,
gas.
and
Yeah.
then it all it all goes
It
away.
stays there. It stays there. It never goes anywhere. You're right.
So before we get into any of the offseason stuff, they have released the finalists for a few of the postseason awards. Start off with Manager of the Year in the American League, Terry Francona, Brandon Hyde, who, if you ask our listeners, who is Brandon Hyde the manager of, how many, what percentage do you think would get that right?
Less than 5%. If you ask 10 people, I think one, maybe two
Yeah.
would know who Brandon Hyde is.
He is the manager of the Baltimore Orioles, for those listening and watching that don't know. And then Scott Service, the manager of the Seattle Mariners, also up for the American League. I tell you what, I mean, yeah, Francona and Service, they both made the postseason, but the Orioles came pretty close, and they traded away a lot of his players during the season.
Yeah, I agree with you. I would have taken Hyde as well. Service would have been my other choice. And, those three guys, I think, did a phenomenal job considering youth, maybe a low payroll, things of that nature, and just the image that the Orioles have had over the last few years of being a miserable organization. I would any one of those guys would be worthy of being manager of the year. Now, the National League is a little different.
Yeah, National League, it is Dave Roberts, Buck Showalter,
$280 million payroll for Dave Roberts, $282 million for Buck Showalter. And who was the third one?
Brian Snitker. Yeah, who won the World Series last year, and all they did was replace Freddie Freeman with Matt Olson.
Well, the other thing, though, I give them credit for is, and you and I were talking about this last night, they caught the New York Mets. When they were struggling midseason, and they were playing like the St. Louis Blues were, and they had the meeting about just going out and playing. Let's not get caught up in making this too complicated. He's got a really good coaching staff, too. But when they caught the Mets, who were running away with this thing, that said a lot about what Brian Snitker was able to do to keep that team together. And you're right. He moved they moved Freddie Freeman. The guy they brought in had a solid year. I think that the two pitchers really stepped up for them in Freed and also Spencer Strider. So they did a lot of good things. And then their outfielder, their center fielder, had a really good season also. So I didn't have a problem with that. I thought Ali Marmol should have had more votes as far as being one of the finalists, considering what he was able to do in his first year. When you think about other than Goldschmidt, Arenado, and Albert, you didn't have much as far as offense was concerned. And your pitching was almost no name. And you still found a way to win your division. Now, the division was weak, but they, too, caught the Milwaukee Brewers and passed them and never looked back. So I thought he would have garnered a little bit more support, but I'm not worried. I think he'll win one of these soon.
And I mean, they also left out Rob Thompson, who I've been talking.
Yeah.
You've been on board for Ollie for a lot of the year. I've been on board for Thompson for taking over a team that was left for dead when they fired Joe Girardi and leading them into the postseason. Now, all these votes are done before they get into the postseason. So the Phillies making it to the World Series did not play into this at all. But I was saying this even before we got to the postseason, that for the fact that the Phillies made it there after firing their manager midseason for taking over when he did. I mean, we've seen it in years past. What did Mike Schilt? He was a finalist when he took over halfway through a few years ago and made a run with the Cardinals. It's something that I think should have been taken into account by the voters.
I agree with you. I agree wholeheartedly. But I think that he'll have his chance. I think Buck Showalter will win. He'll have the East Coast block behind him. And as I said, if I had $282 million, I'm going to be in the voting as well.
Yeah.
I mean, he had a lot to work with. And so, but it's. Some of these awards. Oh, I wanted to ask you about this while we're talking about baseball. What about the Hall of Fame candidates that were announced last night?
For the what committee is this for? This is
contemporary I forgot what it's called. But do you have the list in front of you?
Contemporary baseball era ballots is what it is. The list is 8 players: Albert Bell, Barry Bonds, Roger Clemens, Don Mattingly, Fred McGriff, Dale Murphy, Rafael Palmeiro, Kurt Schilling, and that's your list.
McGriff and Murphy would be my 2 candidates.
I will say this: there is no way in hell Kurt Schilling's getting into anything being voted on by peers or
Well, no, you know
media,
who's voting
whatever.
on? These are Hall of Famers that vote now.
Okay.
That's going to be even more interesting because you have some Hall of Famers that don't think anybody should be in the Hall of Fame after they get in. And I think that you're going to rub some people the wrong way with Schilling. Clemens the same. Clemens and Bonds are 2 guys that I thought were Hall of Fame worthy before the allegations came about. I mean, they'd proven that they were really good players before anybody brought up steroids or anything else. So, they probably get a little bit closer look because I think one of the issues you have to take into account now, some of these Hall of Famers, were they exposed to it as far as players they played with, or were they using it and never got caught? Yeah. I think that the whole process is one that we probably ought to take a long, hard look at.
Yeah. According to the baseballhall.org, the ERA Committee, it was formerly known as the Veterans Committee. It says it considers retired Major League ball players who are no longer eligible for election by the Baseball Writers Association of America. The ERA Committee has been part of the Hall of Fame process since 1936. As I look through this, it said here only 16 members on the list, and they need to receive 75% of the votes. So 12 of the 16 need to vote them in. I would agree on that. I wonder where Mattingly kind of ranks on that.
Well, that's a good question.
He has been seen in a good light in baseball for so many years with the work he's done managing the Dodgers and also the Marlins, and I think that has probably made him look out there. Yeah, it's made him look a lot better too. I think in the eyes of a lot of some of these voters, who they might be.
He's a good player. I mean, he had some back issues that kind of slowed him down, but he was a good player. Yeah, I think McGriff is a guy that's just a few home runs away from 500. And he was as good as it was in his era.
Is this the same group that voted? Is this the same group that voted Harold Baines in last year?
Harold Baines for what?
The Hall of Fame.
Oh, no. That's a different group.
Okay.
This is a Writers Association.
Okay.
Yeah, this is a Writers. Now that was the Writers Association. This is a different group of people. As I mentioned, it was Hall of Famers. It was owners. Because I remember Ozzie and Rick Hummel were on this committee at one point. Yeah. So I'm not sure how it's being made. I think they're going to make the announcement here soon.
Harold Baines was voted in by today's game committee.
Yeah. So we'll see how that works out.
A guy to look for future ballots like this. I wonder if somebody like a Jim Edmonds could gain a little traction in one of these committees, one of these veteran committees. When you look at the Gold Gloves that he won during his career and some of the numbers he had, it was really unfair that he only spent 1 year on the ballot. And I wonder if one of these committees gives him a little nudge down the road.
I'm not sure. I'll tell you a guy who probably should be considered more than Jim Edmonds, and he's got some baggage with regard to the Houston scandal. Carlos Beltran.
Is he up for he's up for the first time on the actual vote this year, right?
Down the road, I think that his name is going to come up. Edmonds, that's a good point you make. I think Edmonds is a guy who's on the outside looking in. I think that's where he'll always be. Because I think there are other center fielders. I think Andrew Jones was a superior center fielder over Jim Edmonds.
Yeah. Just for, guys like Schilling, Palmeiro, Bell, for what we, for the, I guess the way they presented themselves towards the end of their careers, during their careers, after their careers, I think that definitely keeps them out. And it makes it easy to pass them over.
Albert Bell might have a shot. Tell you another guy that nobody talks about is played for Miami, played for the Dodgers, right-handed hitter, swung a heavy bat and had that big wave in his bat, and I can't think of his name.
Sheffield?
Gary Sheffield, 500 home runs. He's one of those guys that some would say, well, he stayed too long. Well, if you can stay that long, hit 500 home runs, you were doing something else right.
Right.
So he would be a guy that I think is going to have to be looked at a little closer.
Let's talk. Go back to the awards here. Talk about guys who are a long way away from being eligible for the Hall of Fame. That would be your Rookie of the Year candidates in baseball. Quickly, just American League. It is Stephen Kwan, Julio Rodriguez, and Adley Rutschman. I think Julio Rodriguez runs away with the voting in that. In the National League, I think it's a little surprising to see a Cardinal on this list. Brendan Donovan up for Rookie of the Year, going up against two members of the Atlanta Braves, Michael Harris II and Spencer Strider, who we talked about both of them earlier in the show. Brendan Donovan already won a Gold Glove, the first ever National League Utility Gold Glove last week, and now he's up for yet another award. I think it's put himself maybe on the radar in Major League Baseball. I don't think many people knew the name of Brendan Donovan, but after seeing him up for a few awards, people go, oh, okay, let me take a look at this guy.
And you know what's the most ironic thing about this? He didn't even start the season with us. Remember, I told you I thought he should have made the team out of spring training, and they took Newt Bar instead. Now, they both finished the season on the team. But, yeah, Donovan was a guy that when we first heard about him, he had a really good Arizona Fall League. Had a decent spring, and then we found out he's that versatile. It was a great story, but I think the winner will come from Atlanta. Those two players really were difference makers for their ball club, and maybe they split the vote, and maybe Donovan slips in. Who knows? But to be recognized as a finalist, I think is a great honor in its own right.
Yeah, and will if there were any eyes that needed to be opened for him in his role on the team next year, I don't think there were, but I think that does secure him a spot in a lot of people's minds for having a big role in the 2023 Cardinals.
I don't think there's any doubt. Where you play him, who knows? Just show up to the ballpark. He'll have a glove for whatever position he needs.
And that's a good thing. That's a good thing to have, knowing that, you aren't going to be – you don't have to look at it and say, hey, we're set at this position because we have Brendan Donovan. No. You know what? You go get another player. Brendan Donovan can go somewhere else and play.
Yeah,
and
I agree.
You move him around and do that. And
He'll
then
get 500 at bats.
Yeah, they'll figure it out. And then finally, let's talk NFL, the MVP awards. As the American League, this one, when we get down to the voting, Yordan Alvarez is in there because they needed three names. The other, it's Aaron Rodgers versus Shohei Ohtani for the AL MVP. Shohei Ohtani continues to do things that we have never seen a player do in Major League history, doing things even better than what Babe Ruth did during his time. Aaron Judge hit 62 home runs.
Yeah, and the Ohtani thing is unfortunate because as good as he is, and as you mentioned, some great things we've never seen before, he still wasn't good enough to help his team get in the postseason. And I think that's the difference. And granted, Judge hit the 62, a tip of the cap to that, and a better defender than people give him credit for. I have no problem with Aaron Judge being the most valuable player. The National League, it should be Goldschmidt, Machado, Arenado in that order.
Those are the three finalists. You mentioned, folks, you mentioned the Braves rookies possibly splitting the vote to let Brendan Donovan slip in there and win. A lot of people in Southern California hoping the same thing happens with that NL MVP vote. But I think it's pretty clear. I think it's pretty clear to people that watched. Paul Goldschmidt was the best player, the most valuable player on the Cardinals this year. Nolan Arenado had one hell of a year and should be also in that top three.
Manny got San Diego back in the hunt as far as postseason was concerned. And you think about third baseman, you have Arenado, you have Manny, you got Ke'Bryan Hayes over in Pittsburgh. He's a really good player that we better start paying attention to. The guy in Atlanta starting to make a name for himself. A lot of good third basemen starting to come up in Major League Baseball.
As we start the beginning of hot stove season, we're hearing little rumors here and there. I know yesterday I saw John Segura, his option was not picked up. Anthony Rizzo, he declined his option. Both of them will be free agents. John Hamm voiced over a video talking up Trey Turner, so that's going to have people connecting him to St. Louis now. Early thoughts, just 90 seconds worth of thoughts here.
So hold on, let's back up.
Yeah.
Why would we connect?
Because
Trey
John
Turner?
Hamm's from St. Louis, and now he's talking to Trey
John
Turner.
Hamm got,
So,
what's
yeah.
that got to do with anything?
Because he's from St. Louis, so of course, he's talking him up. So maybe
if I see Trey Turner tomorrow at the airport,
yeah,
and talk to him, I don't. Okay, I understand what you're saying. I don't think that's relevant here, though. I really don't.
Well, we'll wait and see who Aaron Judge gets to voice over his video package, because whatever agency he's at, they saw Trey Turner's video and they were like, shit, we need to go make one of those for Aaron Judge.
Well, see, here's the thing, and here's the connection. John Hamm and Trey Turner are represented by the same company. CAA.
Yeah, they have friends. Yeah,
So that's the only. It has nothing to do with St. Louis.
Who the Cardinals we know need a catcher. There are reports that the Blue Jays are going to be looking to trade one of their catchers. We know Sean Murphy's out there, also possibly being traded this offseason. What do the Cardinals, if we are watching dominoes fall here for the postseason or for the offseason, which domino do you think needs to fall first?
Get the catching thing resolved. Let's not fool around with it. And you can do it. You're gonna have to move some assets. I'm not a Contreras guy. I don't think you should spend that kind of money on him. I think you can probably make a trade and move some assets that you have that probably won't have as much impact on the Cardinals as they would somewhere else. Then you have to make a decision about your shortstop situation. And finally, I think obviously you need another bat somewhere. And preferably it would be someone in the outfield. Now, the question is, do you think Jordan Walker is going to have an impact this year? And the other question is, do you think you need another left-handed bat off the bench? Was Corey Dickerson enough? And if you like him enough, do you bring him back, and at what price? Or do you continue to look to find another left-handed bat coming off the bench in the event that Nolan Gorman doesn't win the job at second base and he becomes relegated to just being a DH? See, there's so many things I'm thinking. I always felt Nolan Gorman should have been a left fielder, okay? And I still think he might be in left field because I don't know about what Tyler O'Neill's situation is going to be. Dylan Carlson, does a new hitting coach and assistant hitting coach change his approach? I think it will. Lars Nootbaar needs to be more consistent offensively. Does a new look coach help his game? So I think there's a lot of questions to be asked before we even start playing catch with regard to the impact that the hitting coaches in Turner Ward and Brandon Allen, what they can have on guys that they worked with in the past. So, I'd say stay tuned. But here's another element, Joe, we haven't talked about. Do you go out and find you a stud pitcher? Is Rodon the guy you want to go along with an already deep rotation of Flaherty, Michaelis, Montgomery, Matz? You got
or is Quintana? Yeah, do you try to keep Quintana around because of the success he had here the second half of the year?
Yeah, you got a lot of left-handers out here. So, but I would also go to this direction. I think you need to bolster the bullpen. I think you need to go find another closer to go along with Helsley. Helsley was okay. He wound up everyone with his velocity, but there was some situations this year where you were kind of holding your breath. I really feel like the Cardinals need to find another closer to have a 1-2 combination and not have to count on one guy all the time. And I think we need some more experience in the bullpen.
And finally, your thoughts on Matt Holliday getting the bench coaching job?
Well, we'll see. I don't know. He's never done it before, never coached in the big leagues. I think bench coach is the most important and the most demanding position of any of the coaches except for the manager. Bench coach is a conduit between players and manager. Bench coach is a chief of staff with the coaching staff, so he kind of organizes their responsibilities. Bench coach puts together spring training. At least they used to. I don't know if Matt Holly is going to put together spring training. Bench coaches, the eyes and ears for the manager and making sure he's one inning ahead of the manager as far as what do we do in this situation. Bench coach is the guy who makes sure they let everybody know what's going on in the bullpen, who to get hot. So there's a lot of things that come with this. And for as many years as Matt Holliday spent in the Major League dugout, I wonder how close was he ever to a bench coach.
This is Lunch with Claibs and Joe here on claibsonline.com. Still need to get to some football talk, and we will do that right after this here on Lunch with Claibs and Joe, powered by Ameren, Illinois, driven by Munganess St. Louis Acura.
St. Louis Acura has an unbeatable selection of new cars arriving daily, like the all-new 2023 Acura Integra. We also have a great selection of over 200 pre-owned and factory precision courtesy vehicles with finance rates as low as 1.9% for 36 months with approved credit. And we've added Saturday service hours to our newly renovated service facility. Don't forget, we'll buy your vehicle here at our dealership or from the convenience of your home. St. Louis Acura, better than ever for you.
Final segment here, Lunch with Claibs and Joe here on claibsonline.com. Plan to be out at Munganess St. Louis Acura next week for the show out there on Manchester for next Monday. Claibs, we got football to talk about. We have college, we have pro. Let's quickly get through the Mizzou mess from this past Saturday. Your thoughts on the roughing the kicker penalty at the end of the game?
Well, it's in the rule book that way. Now, they may want to look at it differently. I think common sense would tell you that maybe that's not the right move. But in all fairness, he was still in the kicking box and he was in between the hash marks, and so he was still legally considered a punter. It was a call they probably ought to look at as far as adjusting it. But, that wasn't the only problem. Missouri shot themselves in the foot. The offense is stagnant. Brady Cook, I've said it before, good quarterback, not an SEC quarterback. I thought Eli Drinkwitz's play calling was a little suspect. The one time we brought the Wildcat out and then decided to call a timeout and ran the clock down for no apparent reason. There were some other questionable calls along the way. He obviously doesn't know there's a tight end on the field, and you can throw it to him. It's okay. And maybe he doesn't have a lot of confidence. But my question is, we've seen him now. This is his third year. And so some of his players that he recruited should be on the field. I'm trying to figure out what guy has been coached up to the point where he's better now. And if he's better, I'm trying to figure out how, because the offensive line is not very good. The receivers are good only because they moved Dominic Lovett out instead of him being a slot guy. The running game is okay with Corey Schrader, a guy who was a transfer this year. And we've already discussed the quarterback situation. The defense is much better than what it was. The secondary is a little shoddy as far as tackling. But overall, the guys up front are giving them a chance to win. Now, with all that said, are they improving? I would say yes, but not at the increments I think we expected.
Outside of Mizzou, let's look at the top 25 and what we saw this past weekend. Alabama loses their second game of the season. I think it's officially safe to say they are out of the college football championship now with their second loss. Tennessee loses to Georgia. So now your undefeated teams are Ohio State, Georgia, Michigan, and TCU. Those are the four remaining undefeated teams left in college football. So those are the four that you keep your eye on right now as we sit and we wait to see which four will end up playing for the championship.
Yeah, and it's interesting. Michigan and Ohio State play each other here in 2 weeks. So one of those will go home with a loss. And this thing will come down to the wire. There'll be somebody pissed off because they didn't get in. There'll be some people complaining about the schedule of certain teams. Quite honestly, there isn't a dominant team in this year's college football season, which is why we probably should expand the playoffs. Alabama, listen, offensive line is as good as it needs to be. A little young defensively. I still think Bryce Young's the best quarterback in the country. That what he does on the field, nobody else is doing. with an inferior offense, what he's able to do. Now, I know he won't win the Heisman. He already has one. That's good enough for him, I would think. But at the end of the day, he gives me the best chance to win on Saturday compared to any of the other quarterbacks that are out there.
In the NFL, Claibs, I know fantasy reasons I'll be looking at what happens in Buffalo with Josh Allen and his elbow. But the Eagles win last Thursday. They are still the only undefeated team in all of football. The Bills lose again, so now we have a no loss Eagles team. We have a 1-loss Vikings team. There are no teams in the AFC with more than just or with 1 loss or less.
You know, you mentioned the Vikings. No one is talking about the Vikings.
I don't think anybody trusts Kirk Cousins.
Well, that's I think that's the reason why more than anything else, because we've seen Kirk Cousins implode before, but so far so good with him. The Eagles, I think they really helped themselves picking up Robert Quinn. Defensively, they're a lot better than people are giving them credit for. What Jalen Hurts has been able to do week in, week out, he's starting to trust a few more receivers, and he's starting to go deeper now. So you have to like their direction. They just got to stay healthy. But you're right about Josh Allen, man. If his elbow is barking, he can't play or can't throw with the velocity that we've seen him throw with, they're in big trouble. Big trouble. Kansas City just a different animal right now. I mean, they are clicking. Tennessee gave them a chance to make it interesting, and they were able to battle with them, or the Titans rather. The Texans. But when it's all said and done, Kansas City, I still think is the team to beat because they have more options to beat you. Defensively, they're starting to come together.
When you look at the standings in the NFC, you have the NFC East 8-0, 6-2, 6-2, and then you get down to that NFC South. Not a single team is over 500 right now. 4-5 Tampa and 4-5 Atlanta are leading your NFC South. But then you look elsewhere. The North, NFC North, the Vikings have a 4-game lead right now on the Packers as Aaron Rodgers has lost 5 straight games.
No tears shed for me. I mean, he wanted his money. He got it, and he got the losses that come with it because they don't have anything. The receivers are bad. The offensive line is struggling because of injury. The defense is on the field too long, and they don't have enough studs over there. So there you have it, the Green Bay Packers of 2022. Chicago Bears are another team that, I just don't know what to say about them. Fields seems like he could be a promising guy. Does he have enough around him? No, he doesn't. And so they're just what they are. Detroit beats Green Bay. Hey, it's Green Bay of this year. They're horseshit. So I'm not sure if that says anything, but every win counts for a team that's struggling to try and find its identity.
Claibs, what do you have lined up for the rest of the week?
Well, Alex Ferrario, we'll do something with him tomorrow after the Blues game tonight. Kevin Weeks is scheduled to visit with us, I believe, on Thursday, along with Howard Richardson, Huddle Up with Howard. So we have those things working for us. And you just never know who shows up on ClaibsOnline.com.
All right. He is Mike Claiborne. I'm Joe Roderick. Hey, be looking out for all of our social media accounts for new things coming to ClaibsOnline.com this week. Just a little teaser for you to see what we have coming. As we wrap things up here, thank you for watching and listening to us today here on Lunch with Claibs and Joe, powered by Ameren, Illinois, driven by Mungenast St. Louis Acura. For Mike Claiborne, I'm Joe Roderick. Have a great rest of your Tuesday.
There's always been a bright side to living in downstate Illinois. Ameren, Illinois is making it even brighter with a little help from the sun. Right now, we're building a next-generation solar facility to bring you cleaner energy for generations to come. It's good for the environment, your neighborhood, and everyone living in downstate Illinois. That's brighter thinking. That's energy at work. Learn how you can participate in solar programs at amerenillinois.com/renewables.